Ethan spent the next few days learning the rhythms of the palace, walking corridors that seemed endless, and observing the subtle interactions of Zephora's elite. Every gesture, every glance held meaning. Humans relied on words, but here, silence could speak as loudly as any proclamation. He noticed how attendants moved with precision, how advisors conferred in quiet clusters, and how Queen Lyra's gaze could silence a room without a word. Each morning began with formal lessons in Zephyran customs. Ethan learned the language, their history, and their philosophy of leadership. The aliens valued intelligence above all, but strength and intuition were prized equally. He discovered that to earn respect, one had to demonstrate not only skill and courage, but also the ability to understand others. Lyra seemed particularly interested in these lessons, often appearing unexpectedly to observe how he interacted with teachers and attendants. One afternoon, Lyra invited Ethan to accompany her on a tour of the city's central library, a massive structure suspended in the clouds. Containing records of Zephyran knowledge spanning millennia, they moved through aisles of levitating books, holographic projections flickering as Ethan's hand brushed past them. Lyra was silent at first, her eyes scanning the floating texts. "You grasp knowledge quickly?" she said finally, her tone neutral but sharp. "Most humans would be overwhelmed here." Ethan smiled faintly. "I learn fast when I need to." "Survival teaches you that." Lyra tilted her head. "Survival? Yes. But there is more to life than avoiding death, human. Some knowledge is gained through risk, some through observation, and some through connection." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "I hope to understand all three." They came to a section detailing Zephora's military history, a record of centuries of wars and strategies. Ethan studied the maps and diagrams, noticing patterns that even some Zephyran scholars had missed. He pointed out weaknesses in certain defensive layouts and suggested alternative formations that could have prevented past disasters. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. "You see possibilities where others see tradition," she said. "This is uncommon, even remarkable. Tell me, do you always see what others cannot?" Ethan shrugged. "On Earth, humans have to improvise with what they have. Plans rarely survive contact with reality, so we learn to adapt." Lyra remained silent for a moment, then spoke softly, almost to herself. "Adaptation. An interesting trait. Perhaps it is why you survived the landing here." That evening, the palace was abuzz with a grand ceremonial display of Zephora's culture, including music, dance, and holographic storytelling. Ethan was expected to attend, dressed in ceremonial robes provided by the palace. He felt out of place, the fabrics and patterns unlike anything on Earth. But he moved carefully, observing the rituals and responding politely when required. Lyra noticed his attention to detail and subtle, his attempts to understand the meaning behind each gesture. During the performance, a dancer lost her balance on the floating stage, teetering dangerously close to the edge. Without thinking, Ethan reached out instinctively, catching her arm just in time. The dancer regained balance, bowing to him, and the crowd murmured in astonishment. Lyra's golden eyes studied him, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "You intervene when others hesitate," she remarked afterward. "Humans may possess courage, or foolishness. Perhaps both." "Act when I can help," Ethan replied simply. "I don't consider it bravery. It's instinct." Lyra considered this, silent for a long moment. Instinct. It can reveal much about a person's character. "You have surprised me, human, more than once." In the following days, Ethan was allowed greater freedom within the palace. He walked in the gardens that floated above the city, met scholars, and conversed with engineers who designed the floating towers. Everywhere he went, he observed differences in culture, technology, and philosophy. Humans were often rigid in thought, he realized. But Zephrans valued creativity that could be disciplined into utility. One morning, Lyra summoned him to the palace council chamber. The room was filled with advisors, generals, and diplomats, all discussing the threat posed by a rival alien faction seeking to undermine the Queen's rule. Ethan listened quietly at first, absorbing their strategies and predictions. Then, carefully he spoke, You have strong defenses, but your reliance on predictable patrols and energy shields makes you vulnerable to diversionary attacks. If they attack from the upper currents and create a false signal in your sensors, they could bypass your outer perimeter unnoticed, the council murmured, some skeptical of a human daring to critique their empire's strategies. Lyra, however, raised her hand, silencing them. "Continue," she said. Ethan outlined a plan, suggesting modifications in patrol patterns, sensor calibrations, and repo response protocols. He emphasized speed, adaptability, and use of human intuition to predict patterns the aliens might overlook. By the end, the council was silent, absorbing his suggestions. Lyra's gaze remained steady, as if weighing every word against centuries of experience. "You think differently," she said quietly, almost as if to herself. "Perhaps that is why you remain, unbroken by fear." Ethan bowed slightly. "I only hope my observations are useful, Your Majesty. My goal is to help, not to challenge your authority." Lyra's lips curved into a small, unreadable smile. "Authority is maintained by understanding those around you, human. You may yet teach us something about trust, or risk." Days passed, and the palace became both a school and a battlefield of subtle tests. Lyra continued to challenge him not with open confrontation, but with puzzles, moral dilemmas, and scenarios requiring judgment under pressure. Ethan learned to navigate Zephora's politics carefully, observing patterns in behavior, decoding gestures, and understanding when to speak and when to remain silent. One evening, as they walked through a floating bridge connecting to towers, a minor crisis arose. A transport drone carrying supplies malfunctioned, threatening to crash into the palace gardens below. Ethan acted quickly, calculating the trajectory and using his human reflexes to grab and stabilize the drone until it could be secured safely. Lyra watched, silent and unblinking. When the situation resolved, she spoke, her voice quiet but deliberate. "You are not afraid to act when others hesitate. Few in Zephora possess such decisiveness. It is admirable." Ethan nodded. "I believe in helping when I can. Hesitation can be deadly." Lyra studied him, her expression unreadable. "You are learning our ways faster than expected, human. You see the structure, but you also see the gaps others ignore. That is a rare skill here." For the first time, Ethan felt he was not merely a guest or a diplomat. He was being observed as an equal, judged not only for his words but for his actions, his instincts, and his courage. And in a way, he welcomed it, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also a strange sense of purpose. One night, Ethan returned to his quarters after a long day of lessons, observation, and minor interventions. The city outside shimmered under the twin moons, and he felt the quiet pull of curiosity. He could not deny that his encounters with Lyra had stirred something unexpected within him. There was respect, yes, but also fascination. He wondered if the queen, so composed and seemingly untouchable, felt any spark of interest in him, or if he was merely a novelty, a human who had survived. Zephora's first test. He recalled the words she had spoken after the drone incident. Instinct can reveal much about a being. Perhaps she had seen something in him that even he had not yet acknowledged. As he drifted into sleep, Ethan felt a strange mix of anxiety and anticipation. The days ahead would test him further, his intellect, courage, and judgment, but he sensed that they would also deepen the connection between him and Lyra. And for the first time, he realized that his mission might involve more than diplomacy. It could involve something far more personal, something that could alter the course of both human and Zephyran history. Outside, the floating city glimmered in the pale light of the twin moons. Somewhere above, Queen Lyra observed silently, her golden eyes reflecting both curiosity and an unspoken question. What was this human capable of? And what might he mean to her empire and to her heart? The morning light filtered through the crystal walls of the palace, casting long, shimmering patterns across the floors. Ethan awoke to a sense of unease he could not ignore. The air felt charged, and the usual quiet hum of the floating city seemed more urgent, almost alert. He dressed quickly, aware that today would not be like the others. Reports had come in that the rival faction known as the Crythians were moving against Zifra. Intelligence suggested they planned a covert attack, targeting key political figures to destabilize the Empire. Ethan met with Lyra in the council chamber. The room buzzed with tension, advisors discussing strategy and contingency plans. Lyra's presence was calm yet commanding, her golden eyes scanning the room with sharp precision. She had already assessed the intelligence reports, but Ethan's input was requested to provide an outside perspective and unusual gesture in Zephora. "You have studied our defenses and weaknesses," Lyra said, her voice measured. "What do you propose, human?" Ethan stepped forward, spreading out the holographic projections of the city and its defenses. "Your defenses are strong, but predictable patterns can be exploited. The Crythians will likely use diversionary attacks to split your forces. If they can distract the outer patrols, they might penetrate the inner chambers undetected. We need repeat response units ready to intercept, along with a secondary alert system to detect anomalies the main sensors might miss." Lyra listened intently, nodding occasionally. The council murmured, some skeptical, but she raised a hand, silencing them. "Proceed," she commanded. Ethan outlined a detailed strategy, combining Zifron technology with human improvisation. He suggested using decoy patrols and adaptive sensor algorithms that could respond in real time to unusual activity. By the end of his briefing, even the most skeptical generals were nodding in approval. Lyra's gaze met his unreadable yet sharp, and for a moment, he felt a strange connection, as if she were acknowledging his mind as equal to hers. Later that day, Ethan walked through the palace gardens, trying to shake the tension from his shoulders. The floating plants swayed gently in the artificial breeze, their glowing petals reflecting in the pools of liquid light that lined the walkways. Yet even in this beauty, he could not forget the threat looming over the city. Every sound, every movement seemed amplified, every shadow suspicious. Lyra appeared silently beside him, her presence commanding yet strangely comforting. "You think too much for your own good, human," she said softly, almost teasing, though her tone carried weight. "I think because I must," Ethan replied. "If we are to survive what's coming, I cannot afford not to." Lyra studied him for a long moment, her golden eyes unreadable. "You act with courage, yes, but there is more to courage than foresight and planning. True courage is knowing the risk and moving forward anyway. You are beginning to understand that, it seems." Before Ethan could respond, alarms echoed through the palace. Red lights flashed, and the soft hum of the energy fields turned into a sharp, vibrating warning. The Crythians had launched their attack. Ethan and Lyra moved quickly to the command center. Holographic displays showed multiple drones approaching from unusual angles, some attempting to breach the outer barriers while others targeted the city's energy conduits. The palace's defenders were well-trained, but they struggled to respond to the Crythians' unpredictable maneuvers. "Deploy the rapid response units as I suggested," Ethan instructed, pointing at the holographic map. "Divert some drones toward the decoys. Keep the inner defenses ready for breaches. I'll monitor the sensors and coordinate adjustments." Lyra's gaze remained fixed on him, her voice calm but precise. "Do as you see fit, human. This is your moment." Ethan felt a surge of adrenaline. He had faced simulations before, but never a real attack on an empire. His hands moved rapidly over the interface, redirecting drones, adjusting shields, and sending alerts to patrol units. The palace responded almost like an extension of his own mind, shifting and adapting to his commands. Yet, despite the strategy, a rogue Crythian drone bypassed the outer defenses and headed straight for the Queen's chamber. Ethan saw it on the sensors and reacted instantly. Racing down the hallways toward Lyra, the attendants and guards froze, unsure whether to follow or stop him. "Stand aside," Ethan shouted, diving forward. He grabbed a nearby energy stabilizer and launched it at the drone, hitting its core. Sparks erupted, and the drone spun out of control, crashing into the wall just as Lyra entered the corridor. She had moved with the fluid grace of a predator, but even she had paused at the sight of the malfunctioning drone. Ethan straightened, breathing hard as Lyra approached. She looked at him with an intensity that made him feel both exposed and respected. "You risked yourself for me," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Few would dare. Most would calculate the odds and step back. You are not like them." "I could not do otherwise," Ethan replied simply. "You are the queen. If anything happened to you, the Empire would suffer." Lyra's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Perhaps that is why you have survived this long among us, human. You act not for reward, but because it is right. That is rare here." The rest of the attack was intense. Ethan coordinated defenses, patched energy conduits, guided the rapid response units to intercept additional Crythian forces. By the end of the day, the palace was intact, the outer city mostly unharmed, and the Crythians had retreated. The council hailed Ethan's strategy as brilliant, though some advisors whispered that luck had played a part. Lyra, however, had no doubt. She stood before him in the quiet of the council chamber, her golden eyes reflecting both admiration and something deeper, something Ethan could not yet name. "You have proven yourself," she said softly. "Not merely clever, but courageous. Not merely human, but remarkable. Tell me, Ethan, do you understand what you have done here?" Ethan looked at her, his chest still heaving. "I've done what I could to protect you and the Empire. I understand it matters more than I ever imagined." Lyra's gaze softened, the first real warmth Ethan had seen in her expression. "You are beginning to earn my trust, human. Few have done so before. Your courage is not the only thing that surprises me, but your heart, your instinct, your sense of right and wrong. Perhaps I misjudged humans." Ethan felt a strange warmth in his chest. The queen, so commanding, so untouchable, had just acknowledged him not as a visitor, not as a diplomat, but as someone capable of standing beside her in crisis. In the following days, Ethan and Lyra spent more time together. She allowed him into more private areas of the palace, places even some council members had limited access to. They walked the floating terraces, discussed strategies, and observed the city's systems. Slowly, a subtle bond began to form, built on mutual respect, trust, and the recognition of courage in the face of danger. Ethan also began to understand the weight of Lyra's responsibility. Her decisions affected not just her people, but the stability of the entire planet. Yet she never allowed fear or pride to cloud her judgment. Watching her, Ethan felt inspired, even humbled. He realized that leadership required both strength and empathy, and Lyra possessed both in abundance. One evening, as they overlooked the glowing city from a high terrace, Ethan spoke quietly. "Your people trust you because you act with courage, and they follow because you show care. That combination. It's rare in any world." Lyra looked at him, her golden eyes reflecting the lights below. "You see the essence of leadership, human? Most come here and notice the grandeur, the technology, the power. You notice the heart behind it. That is why you survived the first trials. That is why I observe you more closely than anyone else." Ethan felt a surge of respect and something else, a quiet admiration that went beyond duty. "I am learning from you, Your Majesty. Not just your methods, but your wisdom, perhaps. Someday, I hope to earn not just your respect, but your trust." Lyra's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Trust is earned through action, human, and you are well on your way." The city below glimmered under the twin suns, and for the first time, Ethan felt that his mission might involve more than diplomacy and strategy. He had proven his courage, earned respect, and perhaps begun to touch something deeper in a queen who had long trusted few. As he lay in his quarters that night, he thought of Lyra's words and actions. She was not just observing him. She was measuring him, understanding him, and perhaps even testing the limits of what a human could offer an empire in to her personally. The thought was both daunting and exhilarating. Outside, the floating towers shimmered under the night sky. Somewhere high above, Queen Lyra watched silently, her gaze thoughtful. She had seen humans before, but none like Ethan. He was brave, clever, and remarkably honest. And perhaps he was beginning to stir something within her she had never expected. Admiration, trust, and the faintest spark of connection. Alex and Lyris returned to the outpost with the sense that the galaxy was still full of dangers. But they were better prepared now. The rogue human faction had been dealt a serious blow. The small colony they had warned was now fortified, ready to withstand any further attacks. Still, Alex knew that their work was far from over. Rogue elements could regroup. New threats could emerge at any moment. Lyris moved confidently now, her wound fully healed and her armor reinforced. She walked beside Alex, scanning the horizon with practiced vigilance. Humans. Unpredictable. But strong, she said quietly. Adapt. Survive. Clever. Alex smiled. We've always had to be. Surviving in this galaxy isn't easy. But we've learned that working together makes a huge difference. Their mission now was to locate the rogue faction's hidden base and ensure they could no longer harm any colonies. They studied star charts, intercepted transmissions, and used intelligence from both human and alien networks. Lyra's knowledge of her own people's communication methods proved invaluable in decoding the faction's signals. The journey to the hidden base was tense. Every system they passed could be a trap, and both Alex and Lyris remained alert. The pod they traveled in was small, but equipped with stealth technology and modular weapons. It was not designed for prolonged combat, but it was perfect for infiltration. As they approached the suspected location, Alex noticed unusual energy readings on the scanner. They've set up defenses, he said, his brow furrowed. We'll need to be careful. They could detect us if we're not precise. Lyris studied the readings. Ambush. Likely. But humans? Clever. Can avoid. Trap, she said. They moved closer to the base. Using asteroid cover and the nebula's natural energy fluctuations to remain hidden, Alex piloted with precision, and Lyris provided guidance on avoiding sensor arrays and patrol routes. Together, they advanced through the system with the skill of two seasoned warriors, despite coming from very different worlds. Suddenly, the sensors picked up a small fleet moving toward them. The rogue faction had anticipated their approach. Alex's heart tightened. They were outnumbered, and a direct fight would be risky. We need a distraction, he said quickly. Lyris nodded. We. Create confusion. Use. Clever. Alex activated the pod's energy pulse device, sending a burst that disrupted the enemy sensors. Lyris seized the moment to maneuver through a narrow asteroid pass, positioning them above the rogue base. From their vantage point, they could see the enemy ships inside the perimeter, the command hub at the center. This is it, Alex whispered. We can disable their main systems and end this. Lyris studied him for a moment, then nodded firmly. Together. Humans. Aliens. Succeed. They initiated their attack with precision. Alex focused on disabling communications and automated defenses, using his knowledge of human technology and improvisation to exploit weaknesses. Lyris targeted power conduits and key energy nodes with calculated strikes, disabling shields and forcing enemy ships to scramble. The rogue faction was caught off guard. Their coordinated systems were failing, and confusion spread quickly through their ranks. Alex and Lyris worked in perfect synchrony, a combination of human adaptability and alien tactical brilliance. The odds were stacked against them, but their teamwork turned the tide as the command hub faltered. Alex piloted the pod closer, careful to avoid debris and enemy fire. Lyris prepared the final strike, a precise energy pulse that would disable the hub completely. When the moment came, she unleashed it with accuracy, shutting down the base's central systems. The rogue faction's ships powered down, leaving them vulnerable and leaderless. Alex and Lyris watched from their position as the rogue forces surrendered, their control systems compromised. The mission was a success. The colonies in that sector were now safe from this threat, at least for the time being. Lyris exhaled deeply, relief washing over her face. Mission complete, no more. Danger, she said softly. Alex placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We did it together. Humans adapt. Aliens plan, but together, were stronger than anything they expected. She looked at him, golden eyes reflecting admiration and respect. Humans. Not only fight, also think. Save lives. Alex smiled. That's true. And sometimes, thinking is the most powerful weapon we have. With the rogue faction neutralized, Alex and Lyris returned to the outpost. Reports were filed, and intelligence gathered from the captured enemy ships promised to prevent future attacks. The colony they had warned was now fully operational and had begun rebuilding. Its people safe because of their intervention. In the quiet moments after the mission, Alex and Lyris reflected on how far they had come. The bond forged through danger, trust, and shared purpose had grown into something deeper than mere alliance. They had proven that humans were capable of courage, intelligence, and ingenuity that could rival even the most disciplined alien forces. Humans, impressive, Lyris said quietly one evening, standing beside Alex on the observation deck of the outpost. The stars stretched endlessly beyond, a vast canvas of possibility. Not only survive, also inspire. Clever, strong. Honor. Alex nodded. We've always had to adapt. That's why we're still here. But it's more than survival. It's about making a difference, protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Lyris studied the stars, then turned to him. Perhaps, trust humans. Right choice. You more than warrior. Clever. Honor. Alex felt a sense of pride, but also humility. Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. Together we've done something important. And we'll continue to do it as long as we can. Over the following weeks, they worked together to stabilize the sector. Rogue human elements were captured or neutralized, and colonies once vulnerable now had defenses in place. Alex's knowledge of human tactics, combined with Lyra's strategic insight, created a system of protection that was both efficient and adaptive. During this time, Alex observed Lyris not only as an ally but as someone who had learned to see humans differently. She moved with confidence, made decisions swiftly, and adapted her strategies based on the situations she faced. Her respect for human ingenuity was evident in every conversation, every mission briefing. Humans. Resourceful, she said one evening, as they watched a colony celebration from orbit. Think, adapt. Survive. Clever. Alex smiled. That's what we do. And it works even better when we have strong allies like you. Lyris nodded slowly, a faint smile on her lips. Perhaps humans can change galaxy, not just fight. Also, help, protect. Alex felt a surge of hope. The galaxy was vast, filled with danger, but also filled with potential. Humans had proven that they could survive, adapt, and make a difference. Lyris had seen this firsthand, and now she understood that strength was not measured only by combat skill, but by courage, intelligence, and the will to act when it mattered most. As they prepared to depart for their next mission, Alex and Lyris stood side by side on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The bond between them was solid, forged through trust, shared danger, and mutual respect. They were no longer simply a human and an alien soldier. They were a team capable of facing the galaxies. Challenges together. Lyris touched the edge of her armor, where the scar from her earlier wound remained hidden. Wound. Healed, but lesson never forgotten. Trust humans. Earned, respected. Alex placed a hand over hers, a gesture of reassurance and solidarity, and we'll keep earning it together. Every day, every challenge, that's what makes us strong. The stars stretched endlessly before them, silent witnesses to their journey, their growth, and the bond that had formed between them. Alex knew that the galaxy would always be unpredictable, dangerous, and full of surprises. But he also knew this. Humans were capable of rising to any challenge, of adapting in ways no one expected, and of inspiring others, alien or human alike, to act with courage. honor, and intelligence. Lyris turned to him, her expression firm yet respectful. Humans. Perhaps. Galaxy. We'll see. Strength in ways. Unexpected. Alex nodded. They already are, Lyris, and together, we'll make sure they see it clearly. As they prepared their ship for departure, the distant stars glimmered like promises, vast and infinite. Alex felt a sense of purpose and hope. The missions ahead would be difficult, and the galaxy would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. But the bond between a human who adapted and an alien warrior who learned to trust had proven that even in the darkest of times, courage, ingenuity, and cooperation could light the way. Lyris and Alex stepped into the ship, ready to face whatever the galaxy would throw at them next. Their story was one of survival, respect, and the undeniable strength of humans in a universe that often underestimated them. Together, they would continue to protect, inspire, and prove that humanity's adaptability, courage, and intelligence were forces to be reckoned with, forces that could shape the fate of stars themselves. And as the ship launched into the endless expanse of space, they both knew that the adventure had only just begun. But whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side, stronger for the bond that had been forged in fire, trust, and survival. Alex and Lyris spent the next few days preparing for the mission that would take them beyond the outpost. The rogue human faction was not just a threat. They were organized, ruthless, and intent on destabilizing entire sectors. Every plan, every decision, required precision. Alex had learned to anticipate unexpected variables, while Lyris brought her tactical expertise and knowledge of the enemy's patterns. Together, they had begun to form a seamless partnership. Despite the lingering tension from their first meeting, the medics had fully treated Lyris' wound, reinforcing her armor with new synthetic plates designed to protect the injury without restricting her movement. She moved with more confidence now, though the faint scar beneath the armor reminded her of the chaos she had endured. Alex noticed her cautious glances whenever they approached dangerous terrain or suspected patrol zones. "We have limited time," Alex said as they stood over the star charts. "The rogue faction will strike again soon, probably targeting colonies along this corridor. If we can intercept them, we can prevent more casualties." Lyris nodded. "Plan must work. Failure, cost." "Many lives," she replied, her voice firm. The weight of responsibility was clear in her tone, and Alex felt the same pressure. The galaxy had a way of punishing mistakes. Neither of them could afford one. They launched from the outpost in a small, stealth-capable ship, taking a route that would minimize the chances of being detected. Alex piloted while Lyris monitored tactical displays, pointing out areas where the enemy was likely to patrol. Her instincts were sharp. Her predictions helped them avoid detection multiple times as they approached the rogue human fleet. Alex scanned the area. The faction's ships were concentrated near a small colony, their weapon systems active, preparing to strike. Alex's heart tightened. Civilians were at risk, and they had little time to act. "We'll need to split them up," he said, pointing to a cluster of smaller ships. "If I can draw their attention while you flank, we might be able to disable their command ship without engaging the entire fleet." Lyris studied the plan carefully, nodding slowly. "Risk high," she said. "But humans. Clever, perhaps. Succeed." Alex smiled faintly. "We won't know unless we try." They executed the plan with precision. Alex piloted their ship aggressively, drawing fire from the enemy ships, while Lyris maneuvered to flank the command vessel. The enemy underestimated her strategy, assuming she would follow traditional attack patterns. Instead, she used speed, agility, and human-inspired improvisation to bypass defenses. Alex could see the enemy command ship's shields, weakening under Lyris' coordinated strikes. He adjusted their position to provide support, using the ship's energy pulse to disable a small squadron of attackers. Together, they moved like a single entity. Human ingenuity, complementing alien strategy. Lyris' eyes shone with a mix of excitement and focus. "You, humans, unpredictable. Valuable, she said over the coms. And you, Alex replied, are one of the smartest warriors I've ever worked with. We're a good team. The command ship, realizing it was under threat, attempted a retreat, but Lyris anticipated their move. Using a calculated trajectory, she guided their ship to intercept, forcing the enemy into a narrow asteroid field. Alex admired her precision. Even minor miscalculations in that environment could have ended disastrously. As the enemy ship navigated the field, Alex deployed a series of small magnetic mines. They latched onto the hull and disrupted the ship's energy systems. Lyris coordinated an energy pulse from their ship, disabling the command ship's shields entirely. The rogue human fleet faltered, giving them a critical advantage. Alex felt a surge of adrenaline. The success of this maneuver would prevent countless casualties, but he remained vigilant. Rogue human forces were dangerous precisely because they adapted quickly. One mistake now could cost them everything. Lyris targeted the ship's engines with pinpoint accuracy, forcing it to surrender. The remaining enemy ships, disoriented and leaderless, retreated. Alex and Lyris watched them disappear into the void. Their mission successful for the moment. As the adrenaline faded, Lyris exhaled, a mix of relief and exhaustion in her breath. Alex noticed her hand unconsciously touch the spot where her wound had been. Safe. Now, she said quietly. Because you, human. Alex shook his head, a faint smile on his lips. It wasn't just me. It was both of us. Your tactics, your bravery, they made this possible. Humans can adapt, but we need allies like you to survive and succeed. Lyris studied him for a long moment, golden eyes reflecting both fatigue and respect. Perhaps humans? Not as I thought. Strong, clever. Honor. Alex felt a sense of accomplishment, but he knew the war was far from over. Rogue humans would strike again, and new threats always loomed in uncharted space. Their victory was temporary, a brief moment of reprieve, in a galaxy that demanded constant vigilance. They set a course back to the research outpost to report their success and gather intelligence. Along the way, Alex and Lyris spoke quietly, sharing stories of their respective cultures and past experiences. Alex told her about human ingenuity, the ability to build and innovate under pressure, and the ways humans could think creatively in situations where brute force failed. Lyris shared insights about her military training, her squad, and the principles that guided her people in battle. You. Humans. Different, she said thoughtfully. We respect strength. But your mind. Dangerous. In good way. Alex nodded. That's true. Humans survive because we adapt. Sometimes that's more powerful than weapons or numbers. We learn, improvise, and use every tool at our disposal. As they approached the outpost, they detected faint signals from a nearby colony. It was small and largely unprotected, vulnerable to rogue attacks. Alex felt a tug of responsibility. We should warn them, he said. Lyris studied the sensors. Time. Limited, but we can try. They adjusted their course and activated a communication relay. Using a combination of human and alien protocols, they transmitted a warning to the colony. Alex explained the rogue faction's patterns and advised defensive measures. Lyris added tactical suggestions. Detailing how to fortify key areas and position defenders, the colony responded with gratitude and quickly implemented some of their recommendations. Alex and Lyris watched from orbit as automated defenses and local personnel prepared for potential attacks. It was a small victory, but meaningful. They had prevented possible casualties through strategy and foresight. It's not just brute force. Later, as they returned to the outpost, Alex and Lyris took a moment to reflect. The bond between them had grown stronger through shared danger and trust. Lyris had begun to see humans not just as unpredictable or dangerous, but as capable, intelligent, and honorable allies. You saved more than lives, she said quietly. You human. Changed perspective. Alex smiled, feeling the weight of her words. We all have the choice to do better, he replied. Humans, aliens, everyone. Courage and ingenuity aren't limited by species. They're in the ones willing to act. Lyris nodded, a faint smile on her lips. Perhaps humans. Special. Not only strong, also smart. Honor. Alex felt a sense of pride, not just for the mission, but for the connection they had formed. In a galaxy filled with conflict, mistrust, and danger, they had found understanding and cooperation. They were no longer just a human and an alien soldier. They were partners, a team capable of facing threats that neither could handle alone. Back at the outpost, the medics gave Lyris a full assessment. She was fully healed now, her wound, a faint scar beneath the reinforced armor. Alex felt a quiet satisfaction. She had survived, and together, they had prevented further bloodshed as night fell over the outpost. Alex and Lyris stood near the observation deck, watching the stars drift by. The galaxy was vast, full of unknowns, but also filled with opportunities. They had proven that humans were capable of adapting, surviving, and influencing outcomes in ways others could not anticipate. Lyris touched the edge of her armor, where the scar remained. Wound. Healed. But, lesson never forgotten, she said softly. Alex nodded. And it taught us something valuable. Humans and aliens can work together. We can survive and succeed when we combine our strengths. She looked at him, golden eyes reflecting the distant starlight. Perhaps trust humans. Stronger than I thought, Alex smiled. Trust is earned. And you've earned mine too. They stood together in silence, two warriors from different worlds, sharing a moment of understanding. The galaxy was unpredictable, dangerous, and often cruel, but it was also full of chance, ingenuity, and courage. And in that vast expanse, humans had proven that they could not only survive, they could inspire, protect, and change the course of events. The stars outside continued their silent drift, witnesses to the bond that had formed between them. Alex and Lyris knew that challenges still lay ahead, but they also knew that together they could face whatever came their way. The wound that had first brought them together had healed, but the alliance it had forged would endure far longer, shaping not only their destinies, but the fate of those they fought to protect. Ethan's shuttle descended slowly through the violet skies of Zephora, the alien capital floating in the clouds of a massive gas planet. He pressed his hands against the seat, feeling the gentle vibrations of the engines. His mind racing with the weight of his mission. He had trained for years for this moment, learning alien protocols, languages, and the political intricacies of interstellar diplomacy. Yet nothing in his training had prepared him for the sight of the capital itself. Towers of crystal and metal floated on invisible energy fields, linked by translucent bridges that shimmered in the diffused light of Zephora's twin suns. Airships and small crafts glided between them, leaving trails of glowing particles in their wake. The city seemed alive, almost breathing. Ethan felt a shiver of awe and fear. He straightened in his seat as the shuttle's guidance system aligned with the docking bay, the engines slowing to a quiet hum. A soft chime signaled that they had landed, and the doors opened with a hiss. He stepped onto the platform, feeling the smooth metal beneath his boots. A group of Zyphern attendants, tall and elegant with skin that glimmered faintly in shades of silver and blue, awaited him. They bowed in unison, their expressions unreadable. "Welcome, human," said the tallest among them, her voice musical but commanding. "I am Lyssa, aide to Queen Lyra. Follow us." Ethan nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. He had imagined this meeting countless times, but standing here now, he realized how fragile a human diplomat might appear in the midst of such alien magnificence. He followed silently, his eyes taking in the surroundings, the glimmering walkways, hovering gardens, and streams of light that seemed to guide the way. The corridors led them to a grand chamber, its walls made of a translucent material that revealed the swirling clouds outside. At the center, seated on a throne that seemed to float, was Queen Lyra herself. She was taller than any human woman, with skin that shimmered like polished obsidian and eyes that glowed faintly gold. Her presence was both terrifying and magnetic, commanding attention without a word. Her long, flowing robes shimmered as if woven from light itself. Ethan felt his heart pound. He had read reports of Queen Lear, ruthless, intelligent, and unmatched in leadership, but seeing her in person was different. She studied him with an intensity that made him feel exposed, as if she could see through to his very thoughts. He bowed slightly, the only gesture he knew that would convey respect in any culture. Human. Lyra's voice was calm but carried an undeniable authority. You come to Zifra at a time of uncertainty? Speak. Why should I listen to your kind? Ethan swallowed, choosing his words carefully. Your Majesty, I come as a representative of Earth. My mission is not to threaten Zifra, but to find a way for our worlds to cooperate. We wish to understand, to learn, and to share knowledge that can benefit both our species. Lyra tilted her head slightly, her golden eyes narrowing. She was quiet for a long moment, and Ethan could feel the weight of her gaze. The silence seemed endless. Then, without warning, a loud mechanical whir filled the chamber. A security drone, malfunctioning from what appeared to be a software error, spun out of control. It hovered dangerously close to the Queen. Ethan's instincts took over. He lunged forward, grabbing the drone's metal frame, and with a strong pull, pushed it away just before it could strike her. Sparks flew from the drone as it tumbled to the ground, its circuit smoking. The chamber fell silent. Even the attendants looked stunned. Lyra's eyes, which had been cold and calculating, softened ever so slightly. She stepped down from her throne with a fluid grace. Examining Ethan closely, "You acted without hesitation," she said softly, almost a whisper, though her voice carried through the chamber. "Few would dare to intervene on my behalf." Ethan straightened, brushing imaginary dust from his uniform. "I could not stand by, Your Majesty. It was instinct, I suppose." Lyra's lips curved into a faint, unreadable smile. "Instinct can reveal much about a being. Perhaps there is more to you than your species' reputation suggests." The attendants murmured among themselves, and one of them whispered to Lyra, but she waved a hand, dismissing them. She turned back to Ethan, her gaze intense. "You will stay within the palace for the next cycle of the moon. You will dine with me, observe our ways, and I will decide if your presence benefits Zifro, if it is merely a curiosity." Ethan nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will do my best to honor your trust." Over the following days, Ethan was escorted through the palace, witnessing both the splendor and complexity of Zifran life. The halls were filled with floating gardens, where plants emitted soft glows and creatures unlike anything on Earth roamed freely, each appearing both beautiful and intelligent. Ethan learned the etiquette of the palace, how to address the Queen, how to interact with her council, how to navigate the subtle hierarchy that governed every interaction. Lyra observed him constantly. She tested him in subtle ways, asking questions that seemed simple but were layered with meaning. Ethan answered honestly, relying on logic tempered with empathy. He noticed that other Zifrons, even high-ranking officials, often tried to impress her with grand gestures or carefully rehearsed words. Ethan, however, spoke plainly, guided by the principles of human honesty and courage. One afternoon, as they walked through a floating terrace overlooking the city, a minor crisis erupted. A small energy conduit in the palace began to malfunction, causing sparks and a faint energy surge. The attendants froze, unsure how to respond. Ethan stepped forward again, using his knowledge of engineering and human intuition to stabilize the conduit until the palace engineers arrived. Lyra watched silently, her expression inscrutable. When the crisis was resolved, she spoke. "You seem unafraid of chaos." "Few in Zifra can act calmly under pressure," Ethan shrugged, a small smile on his face. "I suppose humans often have to improvise. We don't always have the luxury of perfect plans." Lyra's eyes lingered on him longer than usual. "Improvisation can be a strength, or a weakness. It depends on the mind that wields it." That evening, Ethan attended a formal dinner with the Queen. The table floated mid-air, surrounded by soft, luminescent light. Zifran cuisine was unlike anything he had ever seen, shimmering fruits that changed color when sliced, delicate crystal-like pastries, and beverages that seemed to shift flavor with each sip. He ate cautiously, careful not to offend. While Lyra observed him, "You have adapted quickly," she said, her tone neutral, but her gaze keen. "I expected your kind to struggle with our customs, yet you do not falter." "I have tried to observe and learn," Ethan replied. "I want to understand your people, your ways, and what makes this empire strong." Lyra leaned back slightly, her long fingers resting on the edge of the table. "Strength comes not from weapons or wealth alone, human. It comes from vision, courage, and trust. And trust is rare here," Ethan nodded, sensing the gravity of her words. "Then I hope to earn your trust, your majesty. Not just for myself, but for both our worlds." Lyra's lips curved into the faintest of smiles, almost imperceptible. "Perhaps. We shall see." The night ended with Ethan returning to his quarters within the palace. The room overlooked the vast expanse of the floating city. He lay on the bed, staring at the shimmering skyline, realizing how alone he was, yet strangely not lonely. The weight of responsibility pressed on him, but so did a sense of purpose. He had survived the first test, but he knew the days ahead would challenge him in ways he could not yet imagine. As he drifted into a restless sleep, he could still hear Lyra's words echoing in his mind. "Perhaps we shall see." There was curiosity there, but also something deeper, something that hinted at connection. For the first time, Ethan felt that his mission was no longer just about diplomacy. It was about bridging worlds and, perhaps, bridging hearts. Outside, the alien city continued to glow under the twin suns, its towers and bridges reflecting the promise of new beginnings. Somewhere high above, Queen Lyra watched silently, considering the human who dared to step into her world unafraid and wondering what might come next.